Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Sorry. Yeah, well, it's 2.5 minutes after 7 o'clock. I'll tell you, Howard had things happening for him in Nurka, and here I am in the studio, things happening. Anyway, listen, thanks a million. Howard, thank you very much indeed. Look forward to your dulcet tones again tomorrow between 6 and 7 after you've rebooted your computer for another edition of Spain Today. Have yourself a very pleasant evening. Right, what have we got for you today on Live on Eire? Well, I think you're going to really enjoy the programme. I've got plenty of news for you, as I always do. Patricia Traynor will be joining us in this hour. She's got another story for us. I'm not going to spoil it by telling you what it is, but it's interesting and I think you will like it as well. Plenty of historical facts in there too. And in the second hour of the programme, I am going to be talking to Joe Wall from The Walls. All right. Joe and his brother Steve set up with a few other lads the stunning number of years ago, back in the late 1980s. And then about the year 2000 or thereabouts, they started working together as brothers, calling themselves The Walls. They still tour and record with the Stunning from time to time. But they've both had fascinating careers. So Joe is going to join me. They've got a brand new album coming out later this month. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to hear a couple of tracks from it as well. So that's in the second hour of the programme. In the first hour, there'll be other music, bits and pieces to keep you entertained. All right? Do stay with me, please, if you can, until 9 o'clock. If you would like to get in contact with me, you're more than welcome to do so. It's +34 645 99 67 95. That's our WhatsApp number. If you want to call the studio, you can, because I'm back in studio since the weekend. I'm back in Spain. And if you haven't been listening in the mornings, I've been filling in for Dave on Daybreak between 8 and 10, and we'll be doing so again tomorrow morning. So if you're up bright and early, it'll be nice to hear from you. And sure, you might enjoy what's going on. You can always send me an email as well here in the studio at studio@tre.radio. Now, that's that much done and dusted. I see that Katie Taylor's planned homecoming fight in Dublin in May has been deferred due to an injury suffered by our Amanda Serrano. You may recall there was a bit of a kerfuffle recently. George and myself on the G2 a couple of weeks ago were talking about this. Anyway, the Bray boxer was due to fight for the first time professionally on home shores this summer, with the bout originally being lined up for Croke Park before a proposed switch to the 3 Arena due to cost issues. A statement from Katie Taylor's promoter, Matchroom Boxing, confirmed that the fight will not take place as they seek to find a future date. It remains to be seen if Taylor will still fight on the day in the Dublin venue against a new opponent, which could then lead to an autumn clash with Serrano at GAA headquarters, something that George and I had flagged. Well, George, in fact, had flagged it during the G2 a couple of weeks ago. So we wish Katie Taylor well, and you never know, she might just do that fight in the Dublin Arena, in the 3 Arena, in the not so distant future. And Amanda Serrano, wish her well as well. Jack has once again topped the list of names registered with the Central Statistics Office for baby boys in 2022, a position it has held every year but one since 2007. The name was briefly knocked off the number 1 spot in 2016 by the name James, but has been in the top since then. Or being at the top since then. Emily was the most popular girl's name in 2022, up 2 on its previous spot at 3 last year. The year before, 2021. It replaces last year's top name, Fia, which now sits at number 3. According to the Central Statistics Office, the CSO, the only new entries to top 100 names are Blake and Cody for boys, and Hayley, Phoebe, Ada, and Ayla for the girls. The fastest growing names are Tomas, which is the Irish for Thomas, up 42 places to 77th place, and Ayla, Ifada A-L-A, up 86 places to 91st place. So the top 5 baby boys' names for 2022, Jack, Noah, James, Ryan, and Charlie. And the top 5 baby girl names for 2022, Emily, Grace, Thea, Sophie, and Lily. Oh, there you go. And I was listening to a conversation about it on the radio last Friday. I mentioned this because I actually mentioned this on Monday morning during daybreak, and I said that there was phenomenal excitement on the newspapers and on the radio and on the television about the release of the, I suppose you could call it the chart of baby names for 2022. Yeah, it is for 20. Yeah, that's right. And I didn't understand it, but it was great. Absolutely great. Alrighty. Clock is moving along nicely. 7.5 minutes after 7 o'clock is the time. Wednesday evening, it's the 1st of March. That's smashing. I like that. The microphone was a bit loud, wasn't it? It should be all right now. I mentioned the stunning in relation to the walls. Here they are.
2:30, and because of you, I haven't slept a wink. Mixed up in a mixing bowl, my mind is on the brink. The dishes are all dirty, the dinner's on the floor. The cat is scratching at my leg, crying out for more. Hurry up now, you mustn't linger, or you'll be too late. You don't wanna get the sticky finger on this important day. Should I clean up my bedroom, make my bed in case? Should I buy some rubber balloons just to play it safe? Every day is great when she's not in town. Those great days are so much brighter when she's around. She's not in town. Those great days are so much brighter when she's around. I'm not looking for the gold ring thing, I'm just flying on new love's wings. And I'm looking for the beautiful, looking for the beautiful, looking for the beautiful, looking all around when she's in town, looking all around when she's in town, looking all around, looking all around, looking all around, looking all around. Looking for the beautiful, looking for the beautiful, looking all around when she's in town. I'm looking all around when she's in town, looking all around, looking all around, looking all around, looking all around, looking, still looking.
Beautiful sound, isn't it? It comes from the stunning. That's a song called 2:30. That reminds me of a dad joke. What's the best time to go to the dentist? 2:30. Yeah. I have to laugh at those kind of jokes. Yeah, definitely have to do. We know in Spain here the dangers of fires, particularly, obviously in the hot weather, and there was quite a lot of them last year, if you recall, and one that went on for a very long time, not too far away from here at all. But uncontrolled fires pose a danger to wildlife, property, and potentially human life, as well as significantly limiting the ability of the fire service to respond to other emergencies. Cork County Council issued that particular warning in the last couple of days. The local authorities' comments follow some 20 reported gorse fires on the Mizzen and Beara peninsulas since the weekend, which drew on the services of all 6 West Cork fire brigades from Castletownbere to Dunmanway. Now, crews worked in conditions described as very challenging for long hours, with strong winds making it very difficult to fight the fires, some of which came very close to private houses. On Sunday night, local Gardaí called in the Skull Fire Brigade, assisted by the Dunmanway Fire Brigade, to the Irish Aviation Centre at Mount Gabriel. As the blaze came so close, it activated the building's fire alarm. Fortunately, the installation was undamaged, which is good news. So there we have it. And there were fires last night in Kerry as well, I was reading. We might get to another story that's kind of related to that in a little while. But right now, I have to do one of these.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
We were just talking about fires in County Cork, and I hadn't seen this story because when I got to the studio, or literally just before I got to the studio, Howard was starting and there were technical issues with Howard's start. And so I was trying to work with him here while he was in Urca to try and resolve those issues. So I didn't get a chance to see the news before I actually came on air. So I've just had a quick look now, but I see that a fire has caused extensive damage to parts of Wexford General Hospital and led to the evacuation of a number of wards, including the intensive care unit. Firefighters have been tackling the blaze for a number of hours after it broke out this afternoon, but it is now believed to be under control, which is good news. Up to 100 patients had to be evacuated from 4 wards, including the ICU, as I said, and they're being held in different parts or a different part of the hospital at present. However, alternative accommodation will have to be found for them, and efforts are being made to secure space in other hospitals in the region. No injuries have been reported, which is great. At least 8 units of the fire service in Wexford are at the scene, while Gardaí, ambulances and civil defence are also on standby. St Vincent's Hospital in Dublin has said that it's on standby to provide assistance if required. It said it's working in conjunction with the HSE crisis management teams and that it will do whatever it can to support colleagues in Wexford. It's believed that the fire broke out on the 2nd floor of a building on the hospital campus. Wexford County Council had earlier asked that everybody avoid the area, adding that anybody living in close proximity should close windows and doors and turn off all air ventilation. So that story is going to continue for the next couple of hours, I would imagine. But good news that there were no casualties and that things seem to be under control, which is great. The Chief Medical Officer has urged older people to reconnect with other people exactly 3 years on from the first case of COVID-19 being confirmed in Ireland. Within weeks of that first case, as you recall, schools were closed and people were ordered to largely stay at home and stay away from other people as much as possible to prevent the spread of the virus, and hospitals being overwhelmed. Restrictions continued until January of last year. In an open letter to older people in Ireland as part of the multimedia campaign Hello Again World, Professor Breda Smith addresses the isolation and loneliness experienced by older people during the pandemic, saying, if you haven't yet returned to doing the things that you love, I am encouraging you to do so now. It comes as the Health Service Executive, the HSE, said that more than a quarter of COVID deaths in Ireland were in nursing homes, and the government said it plans to establish an inquiry into the state's handling of the pandemic by the middle of the year. Consultant geriatrician and HSE National Clinical Lead in Strokes, Dr. Ronan Collins, said that his experience is that older people are not resuming their normal activities after the pandemic. But he said, with the Hello Again World campaign campaign being launched by the HSE. It suggests that there are still people who perhaps have not re-engaged with society. So there we go. We kind of talked about it at the time, and I remember talking to George Lee on the G2 and asking him if he thought that we'd be changed, we'd be different when it was all over. And I was hoping that society might be a little bit nicer, a little bit better, but it doesn't appear to have been the case. In fact, there would be anecdotal evidence to suggest it might be the complete opposite. But I know just from my own life, maybe it's because of the age I'm at, I just don't want to do crowds anymore. I don't want to be in big, bustling, busy bars or shops or places. I just don't. And I don't know whether that's because we spent nearly 2 years just with the people in our bubble, or whether it's an age thing. I don't know. But anyway, that's where we're at. So I suppose many of us will be thinking about things. Here's an interesting song. It's called Oh Man. Take a listen.
Take a good look at this face. I think it's changing. Take a good look at this place. I think I'm leaving. I don't know. I once did, but this was such a long time ago. Take a good look at this floor. It's covered in letters. He wrote down when he swore that he would not forget her. I don't know where the time went, no, I don't know. I don't know where the mind went, no, I don't know. Oh man, oh man, oh man, tell me what to do. Don't you walk away from me when I'm trying to speak with you. Oh man, oh man, oh man, tell me where to go. That I should not ask, but I do, 'cause I really do not know. Take a good look at this life, because it should not be ending. Take a good look at all these days alone that I seem to be spending. I don't know what you're hiding, but I think that you do. I don't know what's inside, but I think it's the truth. Oh man, oh man, oh man, tell me what to do. Don't you walk away from me when I'm trying to speak with you. Oh man, oh man, oh man, tell me where to go. I know that I should not ask, but I do, 'cause I really do not know. Tell me what to do. Don't you walk away from me when I need to speak with you. Oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, tell me where to go. I know that I should not ask, but I do, 'cause I need you to show me.
Nice, isn't it? Different anyway. It's called Oh Man, and that's from a fellow that called himself I Have a Tribe. Patrick O'Leary is his real name. I Have a Tribe, that's what he calls himself. And that's a new offering from him. Nice one. Going to do a quick break. Come back to me just after that. I have more news for you, and I'm going to introduce you to Patricia.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
TRE.
Talk Radio Europe.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Well, welcome back to the programme. 26 minutes after 7 o'clock is the time. Sorry, I keep giving the time check. Normally I wouldn't, but I'm in the habit of doing that because I'm filling in for Dave on Daybreak at the moment. Well, not right now, but, since Monday, and I'll be here again tomorrow morning, and it's important to keep giving the time at breakfast time. So there we go. Last week we told you about the Social Democrats joint leaders stepping down, and they were hoping that there would be a fairly prompt election process for a new leader, and that has happened. And the new leader of the Social Democrats is Holly Cairns. And she has said that she is unashamedly ambitious about the future. And while she may not fit the stereotype of a politician, that is not a bad thing. Speaking at her first news conference, the Cork Southwest TD said, "Let's not forget that some of the most experienced politicians in the Dáil bankrupted the country a little over a decade ago." She emphatically ruled out any merger with the Labour Party, saying the trust has been broken between people and the Labour Party. It was time for something new, she said. She was speaking this afternoon now, by the way, after the position became official that she was now the leader of the Social Democrats. She said it's time for something new. She also ruled out any electoral pact with any other party, saying, "I am not interested." She insisted that the Social Democrats would not go into government to make up numbers and would drive a hard bargain, citing a democratic change in housing policy and implementation of Sloan to Care as red lines. The Social Democrats leader rejected suggestions that she was too inexperienced for the job, saying, "I have plenty of experience." She said that she was excited and eager for the party's future, adding, "I am up for the challenge and I am determined to give it everything." Ms. Cairns said that there are thousands of people who did not feel represented in politics. She urges them to get involved or to vote for the party. She said trust was a key thing in her leadership, building and maintaining it with the public by sticking to her promises. There was a lot more that she went on about. And anyway, she's there. She's getting into the job, and she's had her first press conference. So we wish her well. Now, as you probably know, if you know anything about sport, and I know very little as you know, but I do know that the Six Nations is currently underway, and we're playing a blinder. Ireland, I mean, and that's great to see. But Ireland will open the 2024 Guinness Six Nations campaign with a blockbuster Friday night fixture in France on the 2nd of February next year. So the location for Les Bleus home games has yet to be decided, but definitely will not be at Paris' Stade de France because of the venue's use in the Olympic Games, which will be taking place just a few months after the Six Nations next year. For 2022 and 2023, the fixture has been the showpiece of the tournament, with Ireland sitting atop of the global rankings and France, the current champions, close behind Andy Farrell's side in second. Now, Ireland won this year's fixture 32-19 at the Aviva Stadium to keep Grand Slam hopes alive, further bolstered by last weekend's win over Italy in Rome. Next, February's visit to France will be Ireland's first Friday night game since the 2017 defeat to Wales. After that, the Irish side will continue the 2024 campaign by welcoming Italy to the Aviva Stadium on the 11th of February. A clash against England at Twickenham on the 9th of March will be sandwiched between home games against Wales on the 24th of February and Scotland on the 16th of March. So there we go. That's for next year. It's been released already. Now, Patricia Traynor joins me regularly, as you probably know. And the way we work this is very simple. Patricia and myself meet up at her house and we record maybe 6 or 7 stories at a time, and then I play them out over a number of weeks, and then we do the whole thing all over again. We're on the 15th season and the 16th has already been recorded. And so let's go to Patricia for one of her great stories, and if you like it, I'll tell you how you can find more. Patricia.
Well, hello, Ger. Everyone thinks of the tricolour as the flag of Ireland. But was it always the flag of Ireland? The fact is, there was another flag before it, which was the flag Owen Roe O'Neill's forces used in the Irish Confederate Wars in 1642. Owen Roe O'Neill was the leader of the O'Neill dynasty, and the flag he flew was a green flag with a gold harp on it. He was not the only one to use that green flag with a harp on it. The United Irishmen, which was founded in 1791, also adopted it as their flag. The United Irishmen was one of the rare moments in Irish history when Catholics and Presbyterians from both north and south of Ireland joined together to obtain home rule for Ireland. They had been inspired by the ideas of the American and French revolutions, which took place in the later half of the 18th century. They were also impressed by the publication of Thomas Paine's Rights of Man. They used the green flag with a gold harp in the centre as their flag, and the same flag was also used later by Daniel O'Connell in his campaign for Catholic emancipation in the 1820s. The flag was later associated with Charles Stuart Parnell when it was seen as the principal symbol of the Irish Parliamentary Party in the 1870s and the 1880s. In fact, it was the unofficial Irish flag from 1798 until the early years of the 20th century. Green is the colour which has always been identified with the Irish, and that is still the case today. People wear something green for St. Patrick's Day, and of course, the shamrock is green. It's interesting to remember that the coat of arms of the Caribbean island of Montserrat is a shield with a woman dressed in green holding a gold harp and a cross. At one point, the Irish were almost 70% of the inhabitants in Montserrat. So, when did the tricolour become the official flag of Ireland? Well, surprisingly, it was a young man called Thomas Francis Maher from Waterford who brought the Irish tricolour back with him from France. He had gone there with a group of people who had been inspired by the 1848 revolutions which had been taking place across Europe. Maher and his companions wanted to talk firsthand to the French people about how the revolution had been organised. While Maher was in France, he was presented with a green, white and orange flag which had been made by a group of French women who sympathised with Irish nationalism. They had made it for him. Some say it was inspired by the French tricolour, but instead of being blue, white and red, it was green, white and orange. It was to be seen as a flag symbolising peace and union. Green for the Catholic nationalists, orange for the Protestants, and white meaning peace between the two. Maher brought the flag back with him to Waterford, and on the 1st of March 1848, he unveiled it from the window of the headquarters of his Wolfe Tone Confederate Club. Later that year, in August 1848, Maher took part in what was called the Young Irelander Rebellion of 1848. The rebellion failed, and Maher was arrested and sentenced to death. Before his trial, he had told a large crowd in Slievenamon in County Tipperary that future generations would be proud to see the tricolour fly all over Ireland. Maher was lucky, and his death penalty was not carried out. There had been huge demonstrations against it, and because of the great public outcry, the death sentence was commuted instead to deportation to Van Diemen's Land, in other words, Australia. He spent several years there, and he even got married there, but in 1852, he managed to escape to America. His wife, who was about to give birth, stayed in Australia. Sadly, her baby boy died at 4 months. Maher joined the army in America and fought in the American Civil War. He was commissioned General Brigadier of the 69th Irish Brigade. Sometime later, he became acting governor of Montana. Tragically, he died in 1867 by drowning after he fell overboard from a steamboat on the Missouri River. There's a statue of Maher in front of the Montana State Capitol building and another statue in Waterford, which was unveiled in 2004. It was right at the beginning of the Easter uprising in 1916 that the tricolour was flown from the top of the General Post Office in Dublin, and it was then that it was recognised as the national flag. It was adopted by the Irish Republic during the Irish War of Independence, that is from 1919 to 1921, and also during the years of the Irish Free State. It was finally given constitutional status under the 1937 Constitution of Ireland, and it is now the official flag of Eire. The green flag with the gold heart is now the banner of the province of Leinster and is known as the Arms of Ireland. Imagine, Thomas Francis Maher is not only regarded as a war hero in the United States, he is also a man who brought the Irish tricolour to Ireland, and the words he spoke in Slieve na Mon, County Tipperary, have come true. The green, white and orange tricolour flies proudly over Aras and Oachtarán, and indeed all over Ireland.
Sonny lives on the farm in a wide open space. Take off your sneakers and stay out of the race, and lay down your head by that sweet river bed. Sonny always remembers the words Mama said. Sonny, don't go away, I'm here all alone. Your daddy's a sailor and he never comes home, and nights are so long and silence goes on, and I'm feeling so tired and not all that strong. Oh, Sonny works the farm, though he's barely a man, and there ain't that much to do, but he does what he can, and he watches the sea from his room on the stairs, and the waves keep on rolling, they've done that for years. Well, it's 100 miles to town, Sonny's never been there, so he goes to the highway and he stands and he stares, and the mail comes at 4, but the mailman is old. Oh, but still he dreams his dreams full of silver and gold. Sonny, don't go away, I'm here all alone. Daddy's a sailor and he never comes home, and nights are so long, though in silence goes on. I'm feeling so tired and not all that strong. Sonny's dreams can't be real, they're just stories he's read. Stars in his eyes, oh, dreams in his head, and he's hungry inside for that wide world outside. I know I can't hold him, I try
And a lovely version of that song. Sonny's Dream is what it's called. I like that. There's a lot going on in it, isn't there? Lovely. And thank you to Patricia for telling us about the flag. Patricia, being from Northern Ireland originally, calls it the tricolour. Down south, we call it the tricolour. Either way, it's the flag. And thanks a million, Patricia, for taking time to record those with me. And looking forward to our next one. That is already loaded onto the podcast series that we set up to play. Now, there's 96 of them there now, isn't there? I think there was 95. I loaded it up earlier on today. So there was 96 there now, I think. So we'll be celebrating the 100th very shortly. And if you want to hear any of the stories that Patricia gave us, you'll find them wherever you get your podcasts. Just Google Patricia Traynor, Trainor, or Stories of Ireland. Of Ireland and the Irish. That's right. Stories of Ireland and the Irish is what we called it. So there we go. That's the job. And we'll hear from Patricia again very shortly. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Come back to me just after that. I'll be talking to you about Connemara. Yes.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Talk Radio Europe.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Welcome back to the programme. 15 minutes to go before we go to the international news desk for our news. And just after that, I will be back with you. And don't forget, in the second hour of the programme, I'm going to be talking to Joe Wall of The Walls and the Stunning. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. I mentioned that we're going to be talking about Connemara. It's actually Connacht we're going to be talking about as opposed to Connemara. But archaeologists in Galway have called for urgent action to conserve ancient heritage sites under threat from rising sea levels. It comes as new research uncovered the oldest monumental site in Connacht, dating back almost 8,000 years. The Cush-Harriga coastline in Connemara between Cuancashla and Unspedale is the site of Connacht's oldest ancestors. A grassy mound, which had been badly damaged in recent storm surges, uncovered fascinating information for archaeologists and historians like Michael Gibbons and Sean O'Costello. Now, it's one... whoops-a-daisy. Oh, sorry. I was just moving the mouse and the wire got in the way of the microphone fader. Anyway, it's one of the series of sites in the area that they have mapped and documented. Samples of eroded seashells were taken away and tested in a laboratory to establish the date of the site. The result that came back shows coastal settlers were in place almost 8,000 years ago. This shell mound has been dated to circa 6,550 BC, making it the eldest or the earliest known site to have been dated on the west coast of Ireland, said Mr. Gibbons. The mound is known locally as on Tucht Conain, and Conan Muel was a member of the Fianna. Remember the Fianna, Cuchulainn and Ferdy and all those lads? Yeah. And a famous romantic figure in the early Shanakees of Ireland, known as being vainglorious and boastful. He said these early settlers came from Iberia, wow, where we are right now, crossed the Pyrenees, up through France, got into boats, either directly or indirectly via Britain or northern France, island hopping basically. Mr. Gibbons said that they would have been disappointed to discover that there were no animals on the land. There were no cattle, no sheep, no horses, no large mammals. So they were heavily dependent on shellfish. They were eating hazelnuts from the forest because there would have been a wooded landscape there at the time. They were using pelts from seals and otters, and they were living in a world where they were foraging and hunting and fishing. They lived that way for 4,000 years. Isn't that amazing? In 4,000 years, nothing changed. When you think about it, think of the changes in the last 150 years. Oh, it kind of, it boggles the mind, doesn't it? However, it is a site, along with hundreds of others in the area, that is being eroded by ongoing rising sea levels. Mr. Gibbons said that there is a fantastic survey taking place on the east coast, and it's something that he would like to see replicated in the west. A coastal archaeology unit for Connacht and Ulster would be an amazing asset to get off the ground here, he said. There's far more damage here due to being on the Atlantic coast. There are bigger energies, bigger storm surges. We can see the damage in our lifetime, so the next big storms could see the whole mound vanish on us, he said. This is the last fragment of the ancient Mesolithic landscape, which has been destroyed by rising sea levels. So it's crucial that we preserve this hugely important part of our very early history. The site remains extremely vulnerable to the long-term impact of climate change. There are calls now for the conservation and excavation of the site as a matter of urgency to protect the rich cultural heritage on the western seaboard. And so say all of us. Interesting times. Very much so. What am I going to play for you now? Yes, here's a very interesting song. It's new, and it's from a girl called Karen Casey. I played Karen's her latest single a number of weeks ago. She's with Pauline Scanlon on this one, and it's a song that's called I Live in a Country. Take a listen. It's definitely there. If I press it again, will you play? Thank you. Jolly nice of you.
I am the tongue, I am her tongue. I have one smooth tongue and I have one rough tongue. I am here and I am listening. I am the small, roundy ear that has heard it all. We are the daughters of the witches that you could not burn for centuries. We are the daughters of the mother and baby homes when you had us down upon our knees. We are the daughters of the Magdalene laundries when you did what you pleased. To be me, I want to be me. I'm tired of being patient and kind and reserve the right to lose my mind. I'm tired of being patient and wise whilst viewing my demise. Some days I want revenge, but most I fight for equality. Ireland is an empire of misogyny. Fuck the patriarchy, fuck the patriarchy. I live in a country where we long to be free. I live in a country where I want to be me. I live in a country where we long to be free. I live in a country I want to be me. I want to be me. I am stone, I am sea, I am wind, I am river, mountain and rock, I'm salt in the sea, course and I'm action, blazing back at you, brazen as you want to be me. to be me. I want to be me. I want to be me.
9 Apples of Gold is the name of the album that's taken from Karen Casey and Pauline Scanlon there with her I Live in a Country. As I said, an interesting one, isn't it? Very much so. Very much a kind of a narrative on the situation in Ireland. Very much. Anyway, a ban on cutting hedgerows and burning land has come into effect as of today, the 1st of March, and will last until the end of August. Over the next few weeks and months, birds and mammals, many of which are endangered, will be busy trying to find a mate, nest, and rear their young. Under the Wildlife Act, the ban on cutting hedgerows, which is in effect until the 31st of August, is aimed at giving birds and animals the best chance to breed successfully. There are a number of exceptions to the ban, including the summertime trimming of hedges in the ordinary course of gardening and the cutting of roadside hedges to prevent obstruction of drivers. The Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage said it is taking cases of wildlife crime seriously and has urged people to protect hedgerows and upland habitats. It said that there were 32 prosecutions for wildlife crime last year, with 2 so far this year and 60 cases pending. It comes as firefighters in County Kerry were last night battling to stop gorse fires spreading out of control. And we heard a little earlier on that there were 20 over the weekend in County Cork. So that is exactly, the point. So as of today, there's no hedgerow cutting or no fires indeed either. Right, let's press this button. Haven't heard from this man in a long time. New music from him. Here's David Kitt. This is called Balances. Last track on the programme this hour.
Race me back to Bradford, Paris. All that black that's under skin, punching holes for player piano. All those scrolls that roll within, moonlight for us. Time feels broken, porous, my real chorus. Highways lost in the balance, heaven's weather. Lost souls dance together, my will tethered. Gets spent, lost in the balances. Lost in the balances. Lost in the balances. Lost in the balances. In the streets, we pass through shadows, dreaming trees, and lights rain chrome. Don't you ask too many questions when the dark was ours to roam. Moonlight for us, time feels broken, porous, my real chorus. Highways lost in the balance, heaven's weather. Lost souls dance together, my will tethered. Get spent, lost in the balances. Lost in the balances. Lost in the balances. Lost in the balances. Lost in the
an interesting track, isn't it? It's called Balances. It comes from David Kitt. It's his brand new one. I mentioned earlier about the fire at the General Hospital in Wexford. Well, a major emergency has now been declared at Wexford General Hospital as a result of the fire, and a decision has been made to evacuate the entire hospital. That's according to Ray Murphy, who is the Chief Fire Officer in Wexford. No injuries, I'm glad to say, but I'm sure there'll be a little bit more on that story in the next wee while. Right, we're heading to the news at the top of the hour. I will be back with you just after that. Please don't go anywhere.
TRE.
Talk Radio Europe.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Poor Emily got a little bit tongue-tied in the top story. Sad story, but at least the little baby's body has been found, and we'll be able to get a decent burial. And horrible story, isn't it? Absolutely. There'll be a lot more on that, I would imagine, over the next wee while. Nothing worse than getting flustered when you're reading a script and losing your place and losing your composure on it. And particularly, she has her script in front of her, and she has 2 minutes to read that. And if she doesn't get it read, that's it. All the radio stations that take that particular news bulletin, they just opt out automatically after 2 minutes exactly. So that's why she got a little bit flustered. As plans to harness the unlimited resources of offshore wind for power generation off the Irish coast advance, fishers, this is a new word, fishers. There's no fishermen anymore, or fisherwomen, or fisher people. They're fishers. I don't like it. Fishers have expressed fears that their livelihoods are at risk. Hundreds of wind turbines will be installed over the next 7 years, many of them located in or around vital fishing grounds, especially in the Irish Sea. They are key part to Ireland's Climate Action Plan, which aims to have 80% of Irish electricity generated through renewable sources by 2030. Dozens of offshore wind farms are being talked about, but currently 7 projects are advancing rapidly. In December, projects received maritime area consents from the Department of the Environment, allowing them to bid for supply contracts in the upcoming energy auction and to advance their planning applications, which go straight to onboard Planola. 6 of the mooted sites are in the Irish Sea, and fishers say that they coincide with some of the best fishing grounds, which families from County Louth to County Wexford have been fishing for generations. At the moment, offshore wind farm developers are engaged with the fishing community and also with onshore communities in areas where massive wind turbines may be visible from land. There is also a government-established seafood offshore renewable energy working group for fishers and developer discussion on matters arising from the interaction of the seafood and offshore renewable energy industries. Fishers feel the most important thing that they need to have input on its location I'm getting flustered now. Fishers feel that the most important thing they need to have input on is location of turbines on sites. There we go. The fishers, huh? I don't know. Right, I'm all excited about talking to Joe Wall. I hope you're excited about listening to Joe Wall. Let's do a quick break first.
Talk Radio Europe.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
There is a brand new album coming from the Walls. This is the first single that was released a couple of months ago from it, just to give us a little sample. Let's take a listen to that today. We're going to be talking to Joe Wall from the Walls after it. Fabulous song, I like this one. Hope you like it too. It's called Chrome Heart. It is live on Eire on Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain.
Cold heart, it's what you always say. Cold heart, must have given it away. You cut through the air like a nice cold breeze, standing there in your stocking feet. Nothing ever sparks. it's too dark to recognize. Somebody waves, says come this way. So tuck me in, drag me down through the streets of this one-horse dirty town. Modern life with a life with souls is a wallet full of plastic and a pocket full of holes. Follow the stranger to the edge of the town. Follow the stranger, but don't you make a sound. Looking for the light, no, I'm looking for love. I'm looking for a fire, I'm looking to stir things up. So tuck me in, drag me down through the streets of this one-horse dirty town. Modern life with a life with souls is a wallet full of plastic and a pocket full of holes. What do you do when it comes to this? What do you do down to this? You won't try to live your dreams. Now I'm trying to do call it a dream.
It all started back in the early 90s when two brothers, Steve and Joe Wall, joined the stunning, fabulous group it was too. And back around 2000, they released their first album together as The Walls. It was an album called High Low, which was fabulous, as indeed is everything that they have done since. Joe Wall, you're very welcome to the programme. Nice to talk to you, and thanks for taking time to join us. How are you?
Thanks, Ger. I'm delighted to be chatting with you. I'm sitting up in my loft here in Dublin, and the sun is shining outside, so I feel a little bit less jealous of you sitting in your studio in Spain.
Well, listen, I won't tell a lie. I'm sitting actually in my studio in Clarecastle in County Clare, a place you'll be very familiar with, looking out the back at the same sunshine that you have in Dublin, I'm glad to say.
Now I'm jealous.
Do you miss County Clare?
Oh, I do. I miss County Clare, yeah. But I go there regularly. My dad is in County Clare, my brother and his wife and kids, and I go down there regularly to see them and walk the beach in Lahinch and go for a few pints and in Ennistimon and see all the gang, you know.
Yeah. What's it like coming back to, a small town like Ennistimon, small market town originally, and I know it's busy, it's vibrant. Yeah. What's it like?
It's great. I mean, Ennistimon is booming might be a strong word, but it kind of is compared to a lot of other rural towns. I suppose it has the advantage that it's near the sea and it's a beautiful part of the world. Like, you know, the way there's a lot of towns around the country where shops are closing down and stuff like that. Ennistimon is rejuvenated. There's lots of cafes. Businesses are doing very well. There's the population is rising. A lot of people are moving out of the cities and are moving down to Clare and to towns like Ennistimon and settling down there. So it's actually quite a buzz. It was much more of a shock back in, I think it was 1975 or thereabouts, when the family moved from Dublin to Ennistimon. And I was a school kid then. I was in fifth year in school, and Steve was in, I think he was just about to go into secondary school at that point. And we moved lock, stock and barrel to Ennistimon. And at that point, it really felt like going back in time, you know. Ennistimon, like, it was very old worldly. There was a town crier who used to walk up and down the town and ring a bell, a guy called Joe Tobin, and he used to announce the Cayleys down in the Falls Hotel and the whist drives in Kilfenora and whatever was happening, he would announce that. And it really felt like Dickensian times. And, you'd have the farmers. When you go out the door in the morning to go to school, and you see the farmers with the donkeys and carts bringing the milk up to the creamery and stuff. So it was very different to what we were used to in Dublin. But we were all the better for the experience, It was fantastic.
Hard to believe that was only 50 years ago, and look at the progress that's been made. They have the internet and all now.
They do. It was a little bit less than 50 years ago now,
Yes, of course, 75. You're not far off, kid, because I was born in 67, so I'm 56 this year.
Let's not get into too much detail now.
All right. How did the whole music thing start with you and Steve particularly?
Well, actually, our dad bought us a guitar when we were still living in Dublin. It was something he picked up on an auction, and it was practically unplayable. The strings were so high above the fretboard, you need to be, you would need a sort of vice grips to actually play a chord.
Right.
But it was a start anyway. And, we were always interested in music. I vividly remember watching Top of the Pops every week. And, there was a lot of music around. Our aunties on our mother's side were mad into music. My mother came from a family with 6 girls and 1 brother, and the house, they were all, they were kind of like teenagers in the 60s, or maybe 20-somethings in the 60s, but they were mad into music, and as were our grandparents as well. So the house was full of Beatles albums and Frank Sinatra albums, jazz albums, and stuff like that, the kind of the Kinks and all that kind of stuff. And so we were we grew up around that. And then when we moved down to Clare, I actually got more interested in music the longer I was down there. And part of the reason was we were quite isolated. Ennistimon is down in a valley. Mm-hmm. And it's actually quite hard to get radio reception there. Mm-hmm. It was back then anyway. But we used to listen to these radio stations. There was one show in particular that I used to love. It was PJ Curtis's House of Rock and Blues on RTE1. Mm-hmm. And I think that was on a Friday night. And what we used to do is we'd connect the radio aerial with a wire to the central heating system, which would go right up to the top of the house. And that improved the signal a little bit. So we used to tune in and bootleg that show. We'd record the show onto cassettes. And then, with the kind of cassette, remember those double cassette things? You kind of like edit it down and make kind of a playlist of all our favorite tunes. But both myself and Steve really got into blues at that point. I think the first kind of interest we had in music, we were into bands like Status Quo. And then when things got heavier with Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. Mm. And then we moved on from that to all kinds of stuff. I love Neil Young and people like that as well. But then when I discovered the blues, that was a real eye-opener for me, because I didn't really know where all this music came from, this sort of style, rock and roll style. And discovering the blues was a real eye-opener in that regard. And I really fell in love with the likes of Howlin' Wolf and Lightning Hopkins and people like that,
Okay. And moving into the stunning in the early 1990s for both of you, was that your first foray into performance and recording, or were you dabbling either independently or together before that?
We actually never really wrote anything together prior to the band. We were both playing at home and kind of, most of the time we didn't do much songwriting. It was mostly listening to tapes or records and trying to learn tunes and stuff like that. But Steve left for college, went to Galway and formed a band with friends in college, a band called New Testament, which was a punk band, new wave band or whatever you'd call it. It was kind of pretty punky stuff, really. And then by the time I had left school, I headed to Galway for college as well. And then after about 2 years, I went to Galway. I went to Limerick College of Art as well. And then I dropped out of college and I started traveling around Europe, hitchhiking around and working jobs and things like that. And then I got a letter from Steve. I was working in a hotel in Switzerland. this must have been about 1987, I think, in the winter. And he said New Testament had broken up, and he had moved to Dublin, and he was trying to get work as an actor, and it wasn't happening. And he said, I'm thinking of forming a band, moving back down to Galway. And he was going to recruit the drummer from New Testament. And he had an idea for a guitarist, guy Derek, Derek at the time had a music shop in Galway and he repaired guitars and he sold albums and things like that.
Right.
And he asked me, did I want to join the band? So like I took him up on the offer immediately and packed my bags and headed back to Ireland. So we actually kicked off in 1987.
Wow.
And it was a different time in Galway back then. We on the outskirts of Galway, we rented this farmhouse that was surrounded by land and also some old stables and stuff like that. And it was perfect for us. We were all living together, and there was a shed that we could use for rehearsing in. It was a leaky old shed, and it was freezing cold, but it was perfect, really. So that's where kind of things kicked off. And I think the writing side of things really sort of kicked in then. Now, Steve had started writing he was collaborating in songwriting in New Testament. So he was kind of up and running with that. But it was new to me. So I was kind of just sort of dived in and see if I could come up with stuff. And funnily enough, one of the very first things I came up with was this kind of chords and a riff, and I didn't have a melody. And Steve, I played it for Steve, and he came up with a melody, he kind of sang a melody, and then he came up with words, and that became our first single, Got to Get Away, the Stunning's first single. So I kind of struck lucky with my first songwriting efforts, They didn't all come as easy as that later on, but it was a good start.
They never do. And what do ye put down to the reason for the success of the Stunning? Was it the fact that there were, a lot of live gigs at the time, and there would have been a lot more flexibility with radio stations because pirates would have been around in those days? And then at the early stages of the legal radio stations from 89 onwards, you would have had no playlisting. So you would have had support from, DJs that liked what you did. Was that the success of it, or were you lucky with management?
It was all of those things, actually. Definitely, I suppose before we had anything out and before we released anything, we did a lot of gigging, and we kind of spiraled out of Galway. We started gigging in Galway City, and then we'd start, playing in other towns close to Galway, like Tuam and places like that. And then we kind of started to go further afield. We got a manager on board who saw the band, and he thought we were great. A guy called Pádraig Boran, and he was involved in the Galway Students' Union events. I think he came out of that as a student. He got involved in Students' Union stuff, and then he became a promoter out of that. And he had a lot of experience with organising gigs and stuff like that. And he was very kind of a matter-of-fact guy. He was really kind of a doer, So he kind of knocked us into shape and got us. Well, he did some great things, but one thing that he did, he had a Brian Epstein moment where he attempted to dress us, and his choice of clothing was he got us these multicolored waistcoats. They were kind of like technicolored waistcoats. And when we put them on, we were to wear white shirts and these waistcoats, and we looked like a kind of Acker-Bilk kind of a band. This, or some sort of a cappella barbershop quartet or something. It was really terrible. It was very far from rock and roll. So we lost the waistcoats pretty lively. But anyway, I digress. We did a lot of gigging, and I think the nature of the music, it was very sort of feel good, happy-go-lucky kind of vibe to it, uplifting kind of music, and that helps. And as you say, once we started releasing stuff, there was actually very good support from radio initially, because it was a different time. Now, a lot of the radio stations in Ireland, they're playlisted, and with one group, all the playlisting comes from the UK, and those people wouldn't really be tuned into the local scene in Ireland. So that's a real disadvantage, because it's very hard to get decent airplay now in Ireland. But back then, there was a lot of support, and there seemed to be more time for the Irish bands, whereas now seem to be always competing against everybody internationally. And competing with the majors has always been tough. So we did have that. We had great support from radio. The first 3 singles went all, I think, top 20 at least. And they were Got to Get Away, Romeo's on Fire, and 2:30. And then the 4th single was Brewing Up a Storm, which turned out to be a flop at radio. It kind of got rejected in a lot of ways. And the DJ said it was too guitar-y.
Really?
At the time. Yeah, we were really disappointed because it was going down great at live gigs, but it didn't, radio programmers or DJs or whatever didn't really like it. And funnily enough, that's the Stunning's big song now. You know, that song gets played at Irish rugby internationals and soccer matches in all the stadiums in Dublin. You hear it all the time. People are always texting me, your song is on. We're Ireland versus France and they're playing your song. You know,
brilliant.
So it's funny how you know, there's sometimes there's a misnomer that, you know, the experts always get it right, but, you know, it's not always the case. Time basically tells, doesn't it? And the good stuff endures.
I suppose when you think about it, in terms of radio, and this is how I would have always approached it, because I am absolutely anti-playlist, and have been in so much trouble down through the years because I'm anti-playlist. But if the listeners are looking for something, that's what you give them. And that's, I think, and as you say, you were playing this stuff at the live gigs. It was going down a storm. And I do, again, I worked with Clare FM, so we were in your back garden. So we would always have had an ethos of supporting anything that was Clare and try and make it sound good if you can, if it wasn't good, you know, that kind of way. Just, you know, so the Stunning for me has always been something that a band I would support because of your involvement. And of course the Walls as well. But so the listeners, were listening to it at the live gigs, and they were coming back to us and they were saying, play it. And we were playing it. But unfortunately, that didn't transfer in Dublin, maybe, and Cork and other places like that. But sure, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, it's a tough situation right now.
Yeah, it is. And tell me, just before we move off the Stunning, how did that all come to an end? Did you just want to do something different? Had you individual projects you wanted to follow? Had you run your course, or what was it?
I suppose what it was we were up and running for 7 years. And at that age, I was in my mid-20s. At that age, 7 years seems like a really long time. Now it's almost a blink of an eye. But back then it felt like a very long time. And we were trying to break out of Ireland, and it wasn't happening for us, really. We had done quite a lot of touring in the UK, and we used to play regularly in the Mean Fiddler and Powerhouse and lots of venues around London. We supported Bob Dylan. I think that was around 1992 or 3. We played, where did we play with Bob Dylan? The Hammersmith Apollo it was, I think. Right. And we also played with him in Belfast and in Dublin. And the B-52s, we went to Scotland with the B-52s and played with them in London and in Dublin as well. And we did quite a bit, and we were kind of knocking on that door looking for, you know, a label to sign us up. But we didn't really have the connections at the time. And as well as that, the Stunning were quite a difficult band to pigeonhole or to kind of file under any particular genre, because there was a lot of diversity in the music. Now that feels like an asset, but back then it felt like a millstone around our necks, you know. The record labels didn't know like what to do with us, really, you know. I think there was a bit of that. But anyway, people started to get frustrated within the band and kind of felt maybe it's time to pack it in. And there was sort of mixed ideas about that. But in the end up, the sort of majority feeling was we should pack it in and see, could we do something else? Derek was the oldest member of the band, and he'd had a kid at that stage, and I think he was getting a little bit tired of the touring and all of that kind of stuff. And so he was quite happy to pack it in at that stage. It was, you know, there was mixed feelings in the band, and it wasn't a happy time. It was a very difficult thing to do for the band and for the fans. I remember doing a tour, and the amount of tears and teenage girls that were like in hysterics, not in a funny way, in an emotionally distraught way. we were getting back then people used to write letters to us as well. And
yes.
Some of the letters were almost unreadable because of the tears staining the ink.
Right.
Asking us not to break up and stuff like that. It was awful, really. But anyway, we did, and that was, I suppose, we licked our wounds for a while, and then myself and Steve had a conversation. What were we going to do? And were we going to go our separate ways, or would we try something together? And we agreed to try something together.
Right.
So we spent a couple of years learning how to record because we didn't know how to do that. And we set up a small studio in a warehouse in the outskirts of Galway and started recording and writing demos and songs. And I think it was about 1996 then we got signed to Columbia Records,
okay,
for part of Sony. And we spent 2 years in London after that. I think we didn't go there till about 1997. We were there till 1999 or thereabouts. And within that 2 years, that deal imploded.
Right.
Columbia Records signed 5 bands in that year at the same time we were signed, and not one of those bands released a record.
Wow.
It was just totally dysfunctional at the time. There was a lot of shattered dreams at the end of that couple of years. Some of the bands hung on in the hope that things would work out, and it didn't for them, but we decided to jump ship.
Okay.
We just felt that it was going nowhere. So basically we came back to Dublin, penniless. In fact, we owed a huge debt to Sony because we decided to leave. You're much better off being dropped by a record label. If you leave, you're hit with the costs.
Yeah.
Spending to date. So anyway, we came back to Dublin. And that was a tough time, actually, because we were lucky because we had lots of friends. But a lot of our friends had become millionaires in the Celtic Tiger years.
Okay.
Guys who were like promoters and DJs and stuff before we left had now become millionaires and property owners and owners of strings of bars and hotels and stuff like that, and successful builders and all that. And we were like barely rubbing 2 pennies together, But the advantage was a lot of these guys had buildings that were to be developed,
okay,
and were still standing. So we were moving into basements of bars that were going to be redeveloped and setting up a studio there and trying to, finish an album that had started in London. And eventually we did, and released it, and we recruited a band. We got a great band together in Dublin, and we started touring. And that was very much the start of the woes then, I suppose we returned back to what we knew initially with the Stunning, which was being an independent band that was sort of self-sufficient and not reliant on a record company. And it worked for us to a degree. But we certainly didn't become millionaires out of it.
Not yet. Fingers crossed.
Not yet.
Not yet. You talked about the Stunning having, not being able to pigeonhole in any way because there were different sounds from it. But when yourself and Steve got together from the off, you have the Walls sound. That sound is just unmistakable. It's there. Was that a conscious thing, or was it just what you both came up with, and that's where you work, that's the space in which you work, or how was that?
Well, I find that really interesting that you say that, because I wouldn't be entirely sure what that sound is. Whereas the listeners probably would be, I wouldn't always recognize it. But I do remember at the time when we were writing and recording that first album, there was a lot of influences around. There were various influences that probably came to bear on it. We were both really into Beck at the time, and we loved that idea of mixing samples and loops from old records and things with live playing with like guitars and vocals.
Mm-hmm.
We loved that sort of idea. And the trip hop scene was huge then as well. So we really loved Portishead and, Tricky and a lot of really interesting stuff, Sneaker Pimps and stuff. There was a lot of interesting stuff going on at the time. And London was a great place to be, to kind of soak all that up as well. Mm. And of course, there was also the sort of what do you call it, the Brit rock kind of scene as well. Yeah. With Voices and Blur and stuff. That was all happening at the time. So we were very conscious of that as well. And I think the rock and roll element was definitely there as well with the Walls. You know, there's a few bangers in there as well as
there is, yeah.
Loopy, atmospheric stuff. You know.
What were you at other than music at the time, or was it all music? Were you trying to develop other strings to the bow, if you kind of look at it that way?
To a degree, but we didn't. We were pretty dedicated, pretty much throughout the Stunning and the Walls lifetimes on the music.
Okay,
and we didn't do much else besides. So Steve had kind of parked the acting stuff, and he didn't do much, but he did a couple of short films, and he had a role in a few short films. I had basically kind of left behind. I had been studying art before the band, and so I basically kind of dropped that. But I got very interested in filmmaking myself towards the end of the Stunning's time, and that all started when it was around sort of 1992 in Galway, and I was sharing a flat in Nuns Island with a friend of mine, an actor called Frankie McCafferty. And Frankie was a regular performer with Druid Theatre. And he came back to the house one day with a Super 8 camera that he had bought in a chemist, a pharmacist.
Really?
Up the road, and the Super 8 cartridges. I don't know if you or your listeners can remember, but once upon a time you could buy Super 8 film, which is kind of cine film, you know, short movie film reels. You could buy them in chemist shops, Kodak usually.
Okay.
And so he came back with this, and we decided to make a film. And the cartridge would shoot 3 minutes of film. So we decided we'd write a 3-minute film, and we didn't want there to be any editing. So we kind of wrote it in sequence. So basically we'd shoot a scene, and, you know, you'd press the button on the camera and it would start rolling, and then you just take your finger off, and then you'd change the setup or move to another location, press the button again, and that's the next scene. So it was totally rudimentary stuff, even more basic than the black and white movies, you know?
Right, yeah.
And so we did that, and we used to kind of post off the film and put it in the post to be developed, and you get it back, and we had a little projector. So we were so kind of delighted with the results of this. It was a little farcical kind of a film that we made, that we decided to make something else. So we wrote a film, the two of us wrote a film, and we made it, and it was a film called The Birth of Frank Pop. And I won't go into the story or anything like that, but it actually did very well. We sent it off to festivals and stuff like that, and it won a couple of awards and stuff. Quite a surreal, madcap kind of film, but it was great fun, and it was a real learning experience. I had hoped to do more of that, and I started writing scripts and entering them into competitions and stuff like that to get funding. But once we moved to London, that kind of fell by the wayside, and it was very much, you know, I had to kind of really focus on making that campaign with the Walls work, you know.
Okay. Is there any possibility that at some point we'll see something made by you and starring Steve?
You never know. It's probably unlikely.
Is it?
It's probably unlikely, but you never know.
Okay.
It could be a music video, though. You know, that's more likely to happen, to make some kind of a video, which would probably involve Steve, depending on what we're doing. But I don't know. I think I'd be pretty naive to think I could dive back into the film world. There's a lot of business and a lot of expertise behind every movie, every decent movie out there. And I'd be pretty unfamiliar with all of that.
All right. Stray Sparks is the name of the album, which is going to be on release from, I think it's the 10th of March. And we've already heard...
It's the 20th, actually.
Oh, 20th, sorry. Beg your pardon. Yep. My daughter's birthday. I should have remembered it.
And our mother's birthday, actually.
Is it?
And that's the reason for the release, is because to us it's a memorable date. So
yeah,
put it out 20th of March.
And Lucky Charm, which we're going to hear, that features your mum's photograph. Am I right?
Yeah, that was taken in our back garden in Willesden in London, probably around 1968 or something like that, or 1969.
Oh,
yeah. We lived. We actually Our parents met in London,
right?
And married there and settled down. And there was 4 of us were born there: myself and Steve, and our sisters Anna and Helen. And then the family moved back to Dublin in 1970. So
okay, all righty.
So there's a bit of a London connection there, yeah.
Tell me about the album then, Stray Sparks.
So Stray Sparks is basically, I would liken it to, the Beatles had their White Album where they had all the sorts of kind of more unusual tracks and stuff thrown together. The Stray Sparks for us is a bit like that, where it's an album of songs that were recorded back when the band was quite busy, and we were recording various albums and releasing stuff. And we had quite a few tracks that weren't ready for previous albums. So they kind of sat on hard drives for a while, and we moved on to other things and stuff. And then at some point, I think it was during the pandemic, where, everybody was cleaning out at their attics, and we were rooting through hard drives and listening to what we had. And we came across these tracks and just thought that they were too good to not be heard. And we also had a number of B-sides to various singles that nobody's heard as well, unless they bought the CD back when they were released. And some of them were great songs. That was something that we always prided ourselves on, that if we were putting out a single, that the B-side would be a strong song. We didn't want to ever put anything weak out. So there was a lot of good songs there as well that hadn't been heard. And there was 1 or 2 songs as well that we had from, both of us had done soundtracks. We'd written and recorded soundtracks for short films.
Okay.
And so we had a lot of stuff there. There was probably about 25 songs to choose from, and we whittled it down to 12 and remixed them and mastered them. And so that's basically what Stray Sparks is. For me, it's probably a lot of the time when a band puts out an album, they've been living and breathing it for like maybe a year or maybe 5 years or something, because they've been writing and recording it along the way. Whereas with Stray Sparks, to me, it feels fresher because it's been, it was taken out of the vaults and remixed and then just kind of put together. So, I think it's great. I'm very proud of it. In those particular songs that have been, on a hard drive for a number of years, or the fact that they're on a hard drive means that they're not there that long. But if you look at what U2 is doing right now, they're reimagining some of their songs with the maturity and the experience that goes with the years that we're all clocking up. When you listen back to those, was the choice of the 12 songs that you're putting on Stray Sparks, was it because they're still relevant and they're still exactly as you would think now? And were there ones there that you said, no, we might redo that, or that doesn't apply anymore? Was there any kind of a logic to it like that? I know what you mean. Yeah, there was. I think our sort of logic to it would be, as I mentioned, we probably had about 25 songs to choose from, and ones that we didn't feel were quite right, and to make them right would have involved re-recording them. We just chose to put them to one side. Okay. And we really just worked on the ones where we felt they had something special and they were good songs, and that the recording captured the essence of them. And maybe all that really needed to be added or remedied was a poor mix, that we needed to get a better mix of them, or we needed to just refine the icing on the cake, but we didn't really want to get into anything too major, to reimagine anything. Okay. So it was really about just trying to identify the ones that were, that just had a bit of magic to them and something special, and put them together. I've taken a listen to some of them they're on your website. You've got samples of them there, and you're right. They're different. There is, but still, I still say the wall sound is in there. That you can recognize it is there. An unfair question, and I'm talking about your music here. Have you a favorite child? Of the songs on the album? Yeah. It's a hard one to say, actually. I do love the first track, Escape from the Light, because it just has, for me, it just has that sort of, that kind of Friday night feeling. If you were going out on a Friday night and you were combing your hair and dolling yourself up, and you wanted a tune to kind of be your soundtrack, to kind of put you in good form and give you that sort of energy for going out into the world and having fun. Escape from the Light would be that kind of a song,
right?
You know, a bit like Jumpin' Jack Flash or something like that. It'd have that sort of just feel good.
When you think about the opening of Saturday Night Fever all those years ago with John Travolta getting himself ready and all that kind of stuff.
It's not quite a disco song, but I know what you mean.
No, definitely not. And I suppose that whole Friday and weekend feeling thing, I spoke last week on the programme to Darren Holden from the High Kings, and the two lads from The Script had written their new single, which is out since last Friday. And that's called Chasing Rainbows, and they have the same idea, you know, that they're going chasing rainbows. They're off on the tear for the weekend kind of thing. So that whole Friday feeling, weekend feeling is coming back again into everyone's world, isn't it?
Yeah, let's hope so.
Indeed,
we need a bit of that Friday feeling.
Looking into the crystal ball, what's the plan for the future, or what do you hope for the future?
Having done quite a lot of stuff with putting out music from the past, I'm really looking forward to new music, making new music and writing and recording and putting out new stuff. I suppose both myself and Steve now have our fingers in a lot of pies. So, you know, we might, like, there's obviously the Stunning. Stunning could do with a new release.
Great.
And I have, you know, I'm writing, recording music that I don't really think is a great fit for the Stunning. It'd be more kind of mellow and atmospheric kind of stuff. So I'm interested in doing something with that. Myself and Steve have done quite a lot of touring as a two-man, a two-piece band as well, a duo. And we performed songs that Steve has written a few songs and I've written a few songs that are quite different to the Stunning kind of thing. And as I say, it's kind of more mellow, sometimes a little bit folky and stuff like that. So, you know, there's a lot of figuring out to do, to be quite honest with you. I'm not quite sure what the next step is, but you know, all I know is that there will be steps, and there'll be big steps.
Good.
But I'm not sure in what direction they're going to go in. You know, we've got some gigs now lined up for the summer with the Stunning, so we're going to be doing quite a bit of touring, and I'm looking forward to that. The band have really kind of, like, you know, for listeners that don't know or might be confused by my long account of history to date. We did break up in 1994, but we reformed in 2003 because we were releasing an album, and we were supposed to just reform for a tour, but we kept going. And it just worked so well, and the fans loved it, and so we decided to keep going. And so we've been gigging kind of on and off since 2003 with the band, and we put out some new music, but as I say, we could do with some fresh stuff now. But yeah, we have a kind of a relationship with our fans now, where it's almost like the gigs are almost like a ritual. You know, it's a kind of a feel good party, and you know, where the band love playing, and the audiences seem to be really digging us, so we're going to do a lot more of that in the future. When you're writing, do you consciously write for the walls, or do you consciously write for the Stunning, or do you just write and see where it fits? I have tried to kind of consciously write for particular bands, or to maybe take a song and to kind of mold it for the band, or for one of the bands or whatever, and I find that really hard to do. But so I tend to just sort of follow my instincts, and I think my compass as a songwriter is I try to write stuff and kind of arrange it in a way that I myself would like to listen to. I imagine, what would I like to listen to myself if I were to put on music at home or in my car or wherever, and I try to be honest with myself about that. And, you know, because I have fallen into the trap in the past where I've actually tried to think about, well, what will get played on the radio, and what do they want to hear? And it's sort of the kiss of death in terms of authenticity when you try and do that. So I've tried to drop that mentality as much as possible, and to deliberately avoid it, and to just use my own sort of taste and intuition as the compass for creativity, you know.
Not going to hold you much longer, but just want to ask you, just in relation to writing, when you write something and you give it, maybe you might say to Steve, listen, I've written this, or you might talk to Derek and Steve and both the Stunning, and, you know, they might look at it or take it. And have you ever written something that when you give it to somebody else, it comes back sounding completely different, but maybe better or sometimes worse than what you intended?
So you mean if they were to give it to somebody and they were to add stuff to it?
Add stuff, or give you a different interpretation of it.
Yeah, a lot, actually.
Yeah.
That's happened a lot over the years where, you know, myself and Steve used to kind of play tag down in that. We have a little studio on Harold's Cross. We've had it for a long time now. So I might go down and record something and play it to him. And then I'd say, yeah, see what you can do with that. And I'd head off and I'd come back and he would have added things that I wouldn't have expected at all.
Yeah.
And the same kind of would have worked for him. I remember at one stage on, there's a song on the Walls album, Stop the Lights, called All a Blur. And I think Steve kind of had given up on that. It was his song. And he sort of kind of got tired of, he just didn't know where it fitted in. And, so I basically kind of went to town on that and I worked on it and arranged it and put in all these sort of parts. And so he was kind of blown away when he heard it, because
Brilliant.
He wasn't expecting all of these bits, you know. And fortunately, he was blown away in a good way.
Good.
He was happy with it.
Good.
But yeah, no, it doesn't always work that way as well. There's been many an argument and many an insult thrown at somebody's hard work and effort, you know. But listen, it's all for the good, really. It's all for the music.
Before we talk about Lucky Charm and play it, let me ask you about you and Steve's relationship. Are you able to separate the brother and bandmate relationship, or are they the same and they just gel?
I think these days we're much better at all of that than we used to be in the past. I mean, there used to be a lot of tension before, not always, but there would be kind of flare-ups and stuff like that. And I think there was many a rehearsal or occasion where other band members would have hoped that the ground would have swallowed them up, so they didn't have to be there to witness the two of us having a go at one another.
Yeah.
But that's really mellowed out over the years, and we work pretty well together now. Good. You know, and I think we do. I mean, we've been playing together so long that we've kind of, I suppose it's very instinctive and intuitive, you know, and you know, we do have a pretty good relationship in terms of our tastes as well, and you know, the musical sensibility is fairly well aligned. It tends to be. You know, there still is arguments, but I think in general we're kind of, when we're working on something together, we know where we want to take it. You know?
All right.
So, yeah.
We're going to finish with Lucky Charm. Will you tell me about it, please, or tell us about it?
So Lucky Charm was a song that was started, I think the recording for Lucky Charm started in a studio near Angers in France, in the Loire Valley. It's a place called Black Box Studios. We were recording an album that became New Dawn Breaking. It's the Wall's second album. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there were some songs that just didn't get finished in time, and Lucky Charm was one of them. For some reason, we prioritized other songs, and Lucky Charm was, I think it was just kind of came to the table too late to actually finish it in time for the album. So it sort of sat there, and when we kind of rediscovered it, as I was saying, during the pandemic, and we were, you know, unearthing files, and I'd forgotten that it actually was really well developed, and it has all these lovely kind of backing vocal ideas, layers of backing vocals that almost sound like a church organ or something, and or a mellotron or something like that. And there was, you know, there was actually very little to do with it. Steve wrote it, and he may have written it about our mother. I'm not sure, or was it a girl or what? I'm not quite sure. But now with our mother, the photograph of our mother on the sleeve, it's a good fit for her.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I suppose it's a tribute to our mother.
All right. Okay, well, let's take a listen to it. Joe Wall, thanks so much for taking so much time to talk to us about The Walls and the Stunning. Stray Sparks is on release as in from the 20th of March. I wish you well with it, and I'm sure it'll be a huge success. I can't wait to get my grubby little hands on it, and we'll play it until it's worn out. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
Joe,
thanks, Ger. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Let's take a listen to Lucky Charm. Thanks, Joe.
You are a lucky charm. You'll never come to no harm. Birds up in the sky, I'll keep a watch for you. I would travel miles and miles just to see that smile, but only if you want me to. Come on, take a spin with me. You can sleep across the back seat, and I'll take you where you wanna go. You've got a mellow tone, even on the telephone. Everything you say appeals to me. Everything you say is real to me. Give me room and board. I promise I won't snore, and I won't wake you, baby. I'll give no attitude, and I'll praise all your food. So uncomplicated. Will we wind up in the dark? Will we find a lucky spark, and all our disguises will be understood? When I'm broke, I don't wanna get fixed. A lucky stroke can turn out jinxed, but who would wanna live in a perfect world? Who would wanna live in a perfect world? Promise I won't snore, and I won't wake you, baby. I'll give no attitude, and I'll praise all your food. So uncomplicated. Will be understood. When I'm broke, I don't wanna get fixed. A lucky stroke can turn out jinxed, but who would wanna live in a perfect world? 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 Who would wanna live in a perfect world?
Isn't it fabulous? Like it. That comes from The Walls. Lucky Charm is what it's called. Brand new from them, and it's on that album that Joe and I spoke about. Thank you to Joe for taking so much time to talk to me about the music of The Walls and their relationship and the stunning and all that kind of stuff. It's nice. And that was recorded about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And the sun was shining when we were chatting. So it was kind of nice, all right, for sure. And as I said, when that album is released, I certainly will be getting my grubby little hands on it, and you will hear tracks from it as we go along. Alrighty, so that's it now. Done and dusted for another week for Live on Eire. Anyway, if you happen to be around, I'm back in the morning between 8 and 10. That's Spanish time, of course, Central European time. In for Dave for daybreak for the final time this week. Hannah will be sitting in for him on Friday morning. So we're going to go to the news now, and then after that we're going to the BBC until I'm back in the morning at 8 o'clock. I'm not going home. I'm just going to sleep here. I have a sleeping bag with me. That'll do me. Thank you to Patricia for her story on the tricolour, and the flag. And thanks very much, Patricia, for that. Thanks again to Joe. As always, I want to say a big thank you to our Spanish-Irish cultural advisor on the programme, Antonio Sierra. And a big thanks to PJ Curtis as well. It was great to hear PJ getting credit in that particular interview from The Walls. The music that he was playing on the radio all those years ago influenced them, and partly responsible for the sound. Nice, isn't it? Yeah, lovely. Okie dokie. Have a pleasant evening. Look after yourselves. As I said, we're going to the BBC until tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So enjoy the programming there. If you're out and about, please take care on the roads. And we look forward to your company again very soon. From me, Ger Sweeney, thank you. Bye-bye and enjoy yourselves.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.